So, yesterday, Lucy asked a question about skillful means, and I found a nice explanation about that in the book Courageous Compassion, which is volume 6 of the the Library of Wisdom and Compassion series that Venerable Children has worked on with the Dalai Lama's teachings, of course. And so in that book, I won't read the whole thing, but there's a whole page about skillful means, page 98, 99. So I'll read some of what it says. So this is the seventh perfection. So normally we talk about 6 perfections. Those are the ones that we usually hear about. But there's also a list of 10 perfections. And so those are extra ones. And so skillful means is number 7, the 7th perfection. A bodhisattva needs to develop and train in for their attainment of enlightenment and for the benefit of others. So here it says, skillful means are essential for achieving our own purposes as well as for benefiting others. And for that reason, they must be perfected. And in some Mahayana sutras, such as the Lotus Sutra, like yesterday Venerable Pema pointed out, there's a whole chapter in the Lotus Sutra about skillful means. So there, skillful means indicates the way in which, motivated by compassion, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas adapt their teaching method and their own behavior according to the needs and capacities of different sentient beings. So Buddha is sometimes compared to a doctor, a skilled physician. And just as a good doctor doesn't give the same medicine to everybody, regardless of their illness or their age or their constitution, but will tailor their advice, what the medicine they give, and advice and so on, according to each person, each patient, their illness, their age, whether they're weak or strong, and so on. So in a similar way, the Buddha doesn't give exactly the same teachings to everybody. He doesn't teach everyone and guide everyone in exactly the same way, but he will tailor the way he helps according to each person's situation, what's going on in their mind and their background. I mean, lots of different factors, So each person is different, unique. Each person needs a kind of different approach, different way of teaching. So that's, I think, the general meaning of skillful means. And then there's another source text by Asanga called Bodhisattva Grounds. And there he describes 2 groups of skillful means, 2 sets of skillful means. And one is for oneself, to develop in oneself the qualities needed to reach enlightenment. And then the other set is for others, how to help others. So I'll just read a few of these. There's 6 6 qualities on each side, but I'll read a few and then you can look it up yourself if you want to know more. So for a bodhisattva to be able to cultivate within themselves all the qualities that they need to become Buddhas, accomplish their goal, then they need, first of all, they need to develop compassion for all sentient beings, look upon all sentient beings with compassion. And then secondly, knowing the ultimate nature of all conditioned phenomena, knowing that they are empty of inherent independent existence. Then wanting to have the pristine wisdom of unsurpassed awakening. So just having that desire, that wish for the enlightened wisdom. And then the fourth one is not abandoning samsara by looking upon all sentient beings with compassion. So what that means is a bodhisattva, although of course you see samsara as a horrible situation, like a prison, uh, and just full of all kinds of suffering and problems, but you don't want to just escape from samsara and abandon sentient beings. So a bodhisattva wants to free themselves from the causes of samsara, the afflictions, karma that keep you trapped in samsara, but they want to be able to keep coming back into samsara, taking rebirth in the different realms of samsara to benefit the beings who are there. So that's something that they need to cultivate and practice. So even before enlightenment, bodhisattvas have the ability to choose to take birth in different realms of samsara. For example, Ksitigarbha, the statue we have up the hill, that beautiful tall white statue. So he's renowned for wanting to benefit the beings who are in hell. That's his his priority is helping those who are in the worst situation, like hell, because they created so much bad karma. And so he's just really, dedicated to helping those beings and even going to hell in order to benefit them. um, And then, the fifth one is just what I mentioned, taking rebirth in samsara with an unafflicted mind. You're not taking rebirth out of delusion, out of afflictions, but uh, just with compassion, and the wish to benefit others. And then the sixth is spurring their own enthusiasm to fulfill their desire to attain full awakening. So continuing to, urge themselves on until they reach the goal of enlightenment. So those are six kinds of skillful means bodhisattvas practice for their own, the fulfillment of their own goal of enlightenment. And then to benefit others, there's another set of skillful means. So one is to cause even the smallest roots of virtue in living beings to ripen into immeasurable results by teaching them how to transform small actions into great virtue. So, in other words, teaching sentient beings how they can start creating virtue and even make small actions vast, like a lot of merit, even with a small action, such as if we do things with the bodhicitta motivation, if we do things with altruism, even something small like making an offering of a flower to the Buddha, or washing dishes or whatever, relatively small actions that don't take a huge amount of effort. But if they're done with the motivation of bodhicitta, then they become like huge in terms of the merit, the virtue that's created. So teaching beings how to do that. And another one is eliminate anger in those who dislike the Buddha's doctrine. For example, by encouraging them to be tolerant of people who practice the Dharma, even if they themselves do not wish to practice. Okay, so Buddhas and Bodhisattvas aren't pushing everybody to become Buddhist. That's not skillful. You'll just put people off if you do that. So you have to have a lot of tolerance and kindness and respect for people according to whatever beliefs they have. But if you can at least try to help them not have anger and hatred and negative attitudes towards Buddhism, towards the Dharma and those who practice it, because that's not good for people to have those kind of attitudes. So finding ways of helping them move beyond that. So those are just a few examples of skillful means to give you some idea. Is that helpful? Yeah, so basically, we could say the bottom line is skillful means is just with compassion, helping beings to start, at least start creating virtues, start going in the direction of happiness, and finding if they're open to learning about the Dharma, Buddhism, teaching them that, but not in a pushy way. So you have to find ways of, yeah, connecting with people and helping people. That, yeah. And I really like the idea of just being an example. I really feel that that is such a powerful way of teaching others without words, but just being, like that expression, be the change you want to see in the world. I really feel that's true, that if we ourselves live according to our values of kindness and compassion and ethics, non-harmfulness, and so on, people notice that and learn from that and are influenced by that, without having to say anything. That's another expression we have: actions speak louder than words. I think those things are really true. So I think that's an example of skillful means too, is, yeah. And then I had some other thoughts about another question yesterday. Elton asked, was it yesterday? It seemed like a long time ago. The question about the possibility of spirits appearing as Buddhas. And so I was thinking about that. And in Buddhist scriptures, there's the term Mara. They talk about Mara, like the story of the Buddha just before he became enlightened. He was sitting under the Bodhi tree meditating, and Mara, Mara tried to, um, interrupt his practice, interrupt his attainment of enlightenment in various ways. Um, but the Buddha, wasn't bothered by Mara's tricks, and also similarly, the Buddha's disciples, monks and nuns, would sometimes have encounters with Maras when they were meditating in the forest, and Mara would come along and try to either trick them or distract them, or do something to, disrupt their practice. So, it's also kind of reminds me of the story of Jesus. There was a time when he spent 40 days in the desert, fasting and praying. And wasn't it the devil? The devil came once or more than once. I can't remember. It's a long time, a few times, and tried to tempt him. But Jesus said, get lost. Whatever. Didn't let that bother him. So it does seem that, and I don't know if, there's a debate, there's discussion, about Mara. Is Mara really external beings that try to bother us when we're meditating? Or is it just our own subconscious negative tendencies that are coming up and, disturbing our mind? And I don't know. I can't say for sure. I think it could be both. Yeah, I used to be very skeptical about spirits until I lived in Singapore after 11 years. Just heard so many stories and saw things, and that sort of wore away my doubt about spirits. So I'm more inclined to accept that, yeah, there are these external beings that we can't see with our eyes, but they can disturb us or interfere with us and so on. And it could be both, like the question you asked yesterday: is it up to our karma? And yes, it is. So we still have, and we do still have non-virtuous karma from the past, from our harmful actions done in the past to other beings. Then we're more susceptible to being bothered by spirits. So yeah, so I just had more thoughts about that and something to look out for. Um, and I was thinking too that this is another reason why it's important to have living teachers. Because if you do have some strange experiences, you're not really sure what to make of them and what to do about them, and you may not have enough wisdom and experience of your own to be able to determine what's the best course of action, then it's good to have teachers you can ask. And in fact, Tibetan lamas kind of specialize in dealing with these kind of things. Not all, of course, but some. Yeah, some do a lot of, help, give a lot of help to people who are bothered by spirits. So yeah, if you have teachers you can go to and ask for help, for advice, and so on and so on. And also, aside from Maras, another thing that can happen is people sometimes have experiences in meditation that might be like, wow, something I've never experienced before. And it may be really blissful and really wonderful and really dazzling and fantastic. And it's possible to even think, oh, maybe this is enlightenment, this is the realization of emptiness, or this is whatever, realization. And again, it's good to have teachers you can go to and check if this is a genuine realization or not. That does happen, and it's important to have humility and trust in teachers, so that if they tell you no, it's not enlightenment, it's not a realization, to be able to accept that and be humble about it. Because I heard there was one American nun long, long ago, in India. She was in retreat on her own, and I don't think she was in retreat for very long. And then she, whatever, I don't know what happened in her mind, but she thought she'd reached enlightenment. She thought she became enlightened. And she went to one of our teachers, Kirti Sanchab Rinpoche, who's a great master, great lama, and just sort of announced, I guess I heard this from the translator, she just kind of announced that she had attained enlightenment. And Kirti-san Rinpoche said, no, you haven't. And apparently she got angry and stomped out of the room. So yeah, that kind of thing can happen, that you deceive yourself into thinking you've achieved something you haven't. And so you need to have teachers who have more knowledge, more experience, more wisdom, to be able to, give you feedback about what's really going on with you. Otherwise, if you cling to those ideas, you think, oh, I'm already enlightened. That means I don't have to, practice anymore. I can go out and heal everybody and bring everybody to enlightenment. So you could be going in a very wrong and dangerous direction. Yeah, that reminds me, another person, in the early days when I first went to India, there was this guy who was in retreat, and I don't know what happened in his mind, but he thought he was enlightened, and he was Maitreya. He actually thought he was Maitreya Buddha, the next Buddha to come. So he came out of retreat, and he managed to collect one disciple, I think one young woman who believed him. But anyway, in the end, he ended up in a mental hospital. He was really way off the track. And as far as I know, he never recovered from that. So yeah, we have to be really, really careful. I mean, I kind of think maybe there was already something, like he was already on edge of mental illness. But we do have to be careful with meditation. And again, having living teachers and not artificial intelligence. I mean, there was an article recently about this. Some people are going on chat GBT and asking these esoteric questions and getting really weird answers and going down the rabbit hole of really weird ideas. So don't trust. I mean, it's good for some information, but not 100%. We have to take it with a grain of salt. So, yeah, teachers are important, but good teachers, reliable teachers, authentic teachers. Okay, so those are a few things I thought of. Another thing I wanted to mention too is about mantra, because I was thinking, you're reciting uh, mantras a lot, and this is for most of us something new when we first started learning Tibetan Buddhism. Probably didn't recite mantras before. And the mantras are usually in Sanskrit, which probably we don't understand. So it can happen that there you are reciting mantras and thinking, what is this? I don't even understand what I'm saying. I'm saying these syllables again and again and again. What am I doing? This is crazy. Um, so the I think most mantras, as far as I know, most mantras are found in the Tantric or Vajrayana tradition of Buddhism. Maybe not. No, that's not completely true because the Medicine Buddha mantra is in the sutra. So that's the sutra tradition. So I have to take that back. So also in sutras there are mantras. So these are they're always kept in Sanskrit. So even though the Buddhist texts were translated into Tibetan. When Buddhism came into Tibet, they translated all the texts and the prayers and everything into Tibetan, but they kept the mantras in Sanskrit. They didn't translate those. And it said that Sanskrit is kind of a sacred language. I don't know. I don't think they really know the origin of Sanskrit, but it is believed to be like a sacred language. And just the sounds, those sounds of mantras and Sanskrit mantras are said to have an effect on our body and our nervous system. And so even though we can translate them and know the meaning of the syllables, but that's not the most important thing. It seems the important thing is to just, recite them and focus, concentrate on them, and let the energy of the mantra sort of work on us. That's what I've heard. I don't know, but people sometimes wonder, what does it mean? What am I saying? But it's just the sounds. And the word mantra itself, it's a Sanskrit term. It literally means protection for the mind. Mantra is something that protects the mind. What it protects from is our own afflictions, like our ignorance, grasping at true existence, and other afflictions, attachment, and so on. So, by concentrating on a mantra that we're reciting, I mean, of course, it's good to have other virtuous thoughts as well, like imagining light going out to others and healing them, purifying them, and so on, purifying ourselves. So to have those kind of thoughts as well. But yeah, focusing on, concentrating on mantras, it has an effect on our mind and our body, kind of healing and purifying and beneficial effect on us. So I was thinking, there's only one talk today, and this morning, and then in the afternoon, there's a Q&A and discussion. So I thought maybe this session I'll just talk. And if you do have questions, you can bring those up in the afternoon session. So the next thing I wanted to talk about are the vows of the Medicine Buddha. So it said that the Medicine Buddha made these 12 vows, and I won't read the whole thing from the sutra, but I just made a short, condensed form of them, which are here on the slides. I hope you can read them. So I think this can add to our sense of trust and confidence in the Medicine Buddha that he. So these are said to be vows made when he was just starting off on the Bodhisattva path. And it's the Buddha himself, Shakyamuni Buddha, in the sutra, who's reporting on this to Manjushri, telling Manjushri about these vows. So this is typical. This is actually one of the things that bodhisattvas do in their path, their practice to enlightenment. They make these vows. Sometimes they're called resolves or promises, but they have these wishes about what they want to do, how they want to help sentient beings, both as they're on the way to enlightenment and then once they reach enlightenment. And so these are expressions of their great compassion and love and wish to benefit others. So the first vow is about wanting all beings to have the marks and signs of a Buddha. So that basically means wanting to establish all sentient beings in the state of enlightenment so that they have all those marks and signs. And it's not that, those marks and signs in themselves are significant, but just that, they create all the causes, all the virtuous, powerful causes for those marks and signs. So the marks and signs are like, they signify, incredible accomplishments on the way to enlightenment. So he's basically saying, I want to establish all sentient beings in the state of enlightenment with all those qualities. And then the second vow is about light. He's saying he wants his body to illuminate, to send out this light. And he specified, he actually says here, like lapis lazuli. So he actually specified the color, what color he wants to send out. And he wants this light to be bright, pure, of great merit. And then this light will dispel darkness mainly referring to ignorance, not seeing the true nature of things, and help sentient beings have wisdom, and also for them to achieve their goals. He actually says, act in accordance with their desired paths. So what I think about that is, everybody wants to be happy, everyone wants to have good experiences. This is the goal, but then the way we act, the way many people act, is not going in that direction. We're not creating the right causes to achieve such goals. Instead, we're going, like wanting happiness, but creating the cause for suffering. Wanting to, achieve certain things, but going in the opposite direction. So, of course, we do want sentient beings to be happy, but we have to teach them how to be happy, how to create the causes of happiness, not by being angry and harmful and killing and stealing and so on, but by being kind and compassionate and ethical. So teaching sentient beings how to achieve their actual goals. And the third one is vowing to cause all beings to obtain all that they need. And that's in terms of, it sounds like ordinary things like necessities of life, probably food, clothes, home, and so on. And I was thinking, but then you might think, well, okay, Buddha, Medicine Buddha made that vow and that promise, but we still see a lot of beings who don't have what they need. So what's going on there? Is he not keeping his vow? Well, they do say that it's not enough for Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to have this wish to benefit others, but sentient beings from their side have to be willing to, like, to be open and receptive and willing to cooperate with the Buddhas. And we've probably had experiences like that of our own. Yeah, have you ever tried helping someone? Like, you can see this person is going through difficulties, and you really want to help them, and you try to offer advice, and maybe they're sick. Yeah, they're really sick, and you say, oh, why don't you go to the doctor? I'll even drive you there. But they don't want to do it, right? They don't want to cooperate with you. Have you ever had that experience? Yeah. so so it's similar with the Buddhas, I mean, they can't sort of force people or beings to um, receive their help, open up to their help. So they themselves have that wish. In fact, it's said that there's many Buddhas and Bodhisattvas around us all the time, just full of compassion and wanting to help us. But if we don't turn to them, if we don't open ourselves to them and listen, pay attention to what they're telling us, how they're guiding us, then they can't help. They can't force us. So I think maybe it's like that, yeah, the Medicine Buddha wants to help all sentient beings have everything they need, but they can't do that themselves. Sentient beings have to cooperate to follow their advice. And the fourth is to cause those following other paths to enter the Mahayana. So that might sound like, what? Is that like, my religion is the best, everybody has to follow my religion? No, I don't think so. But the reason is the Mahayana path is really the only path that goes all the way to enlightenment, to full enlightenment, Buddhahood. So every sentient being has the potential for their mind to be enlightened, completely free of all delusions, all afflictions, all obscurations, all faults, all, anything that's problematic, totally free of all of those things, and totally perfected in everything that's positive, everything that's virtuous. So that's the state of enlightenment. So Mahayana path is really the only way to go all the way to enlightenment. And I mean, this is something we have to investigate, but and check for ourselves to see if it's true. But the other paths, other spiritual practices don't contain everything that's needed to bring about the attainment of enlightenment. I know some people say, oh, all religions are the same, all religions lead to the same goal, but that needs to be investigated. It's nice to say that, but really check carefully. And the more you study, the more you learn about the path to enlightenment and what it is we need to do to transform our mind and bring our mind to that state of enlightenment. And then you check what is available in other spiritual traditions. If they have all of those things or not, then you might find that they don't. So this is the reason behind this. Medicine Buddha wants everyone to reach enlightenment, to become fully enlightened, just like them, just like they have achieved. Because if you don't, if you haven't attained full enlightenment, then there's still some imperfections, there's still some limitations in yourself, in your mind, in your abilities, in your own experiences, and so on. So the Buddha wants everyone to be totally free of all their limitations, all their obscurations, and reach the highest, most perfect, peaceful, blissful state possible. So that's the reason for this one. That's not prejudice, bias, but just wanting the best for everybody. And of course, the Buddha would use skillful means, not not forcing anybody, but just, working with each sentient being according to their uh, situation, and helping them, guiding them gradually to get into the Mahayana path. And then number 5 is to cause all beings to have pure ethics. So pure ethics basically means, the main thing is to act non-harmfully, to give up harmful actions with our body and our speech and our mind, and do what is virtuous, what is beneficial. That's the kind of main aspect of ethics. And this is important for ourselves, because if we do things that are non-virtuous, we're creating the cause of suffering for ourselves. But it's also beneficial for others, because if we refrain from harmful actions, then they won't suffer as a result of what we do. So it's really the best way to help ourselves and to help others, and also for spiritual progress. If we do have the wish to attain these higher states of mind, enlightenment, and the various realizations on the way, then ethics is said to be the foundation, like the basis. If we don't have good ethics, whatever else we try to do isn't going to work. So it's really, really important to have good ethics. And also, there's a book, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, teaching called Ultimate Healing. And in there, it's addressed both to those who are ill and wanting to heal themselves, but also those who want to heal, who want to be a healer, who want to help others. And he said, the 3 most important qualities for a healer are ethics, faith, and compassion. I'll talk more about that later, but yeah, really, really important to practice good ethics ourselves, to be non-harmful and virtuous as much as we can. And number 6 is for those who are sick and disabled, to have physical and mental well-being upon hearing my name. So let me just check what he says there. He talks about different kinds of illness, impairments, including being blind and so on. Leprosy, insane, all different kinds of physical and mental illnesses. He says, when they hear my name, may they obtain proper appearances and practical intelligence. All their senses will become perfect, and they won't have sickness or suffering. So, really wanting to free sentient beings from different kinds of illness, both physical and mental, and for them to have physical and mental well-being. So that's why it said just hearing the name of the medicine Buddha is said to have that effect. But again, I don't know if it's something that'll happen just like that. It may depend on the person's karma. Then number 7 is about those who are kind of lonely and destitute and deprived of, any comfort in their lives. They don't have family, um, no doctor, no medicine, and so on. And again, if they hear my name, to be free of all these illnesses and have what they need in terms of family, property, and so on, and also for them to attain enlightenment. So here he actually says, not just having those things like family and friends, but to attain enlightenment. And I was thinking with regard to this one, this story. Um, so again, it depends on the people's karma, whether they're open to receiving this kind of help or not. Because in Bodh is a really, really, it's in the poorest part of India, very, very poor, a lot of poverty there. And that's the place where the Buddha attained enlightenment. So Bodh Gaya itself is full of lots of temples and Buddhist centers and so on and so forth. So and the FPMT has a center there called Root Institute, where people can go and stay and they have courses. They also have a medical clinic that offers free medicine to anybody who comes, homeopathic medicine mainly. And Lama Zopa Rinpoche had the thought at one point to have a home for destitute people, people who have no home or homeless and no one to care for them, could come and stay and have a roof over their head and be cared for. So they built this place, for destitute people. And then they went out and tried to find some destitute people. And they actually had difficulty because even though there were a lot of homeless people in the area, they didn't want to go. They didn't want to go there. They had their family, they had their friends. Some were receiving help from Catholic charities. And so they had trouble finding people. Finally, they found one elderly man who was living on the streets, didn't have any family. So they brought him, he agreed to come to this destitute home. And he stayed there for a while. And I know the man who was in charge of this project and trying to run this destitute home. And he said it was so difficult. This man was just really difficult, very, kind of very stubborn and not very cooperative. And I don't remember all the details. But in the end, the man said, I don't want to stay here anymore. He wanted to leave. Because he missed his friends. He had friends out on the street, and he wanted to go back and be with his friends on the street. He was happier there than in this home. And partly because he was all alone there. He was the only person there. But it's just an illustration of how, even if you want to help, you have all these resources that you want to help people, but from their side, they have to be willing and ready to receive your help. So, not always easy to help sentient beings. Okay, so then number 8, and I have to confess I cheated here a little bit, because the actual vow, some of you probably know, the actual vow made by the Medicine Buddha talks about women. Don't get upset. But he's saying, he says, I vow that when I attain enlightenment in a future age, if there are any women who suffer from any of the 100 woes that befall women, who are wearied at the end of their lives and wish to abandon their female form, when these women hear my name, they will all obtain transformation and rebirth from female into male physical forms. And they will all personally experience the supreme enlightenment. So this is controversial, and it's not unique. You probably know there's a number of places in Buddhist scriptures, Buddhist teachings about women, and the idea of female rebirth is inferior, and women should aspire to be born as men, and so on and so forth. So I don't want to get into all of that. But I think the real point here is, and I did find a few other versions of these vows, kind of summaries of the vows that didn't even use the word woman, but just talked about those who are weak. So that's why I wrote it the way I did. Those who are weak and tormented to take birth with powerful faculties and obtain supreme enlightenment. So, so at the time of the Buddha, probably many women, probably not all, but many women were in had difficulties. They didn't have much freedom or choice. One explanation I heard was, if you were a woman, then you were sort of the property of your father until you got married, and you probably didn't have much choice about that. You got married, who you married. And then once you got married, you were the property of your husband. Your husband was your owner. And if your husband died before you did, then you would be the property of your sons. Your sons would have control over you. So women didn't have the freedom to choose what they want to do. That's not completely true, because there are actually many women who became followers of the Buddha. Some of them maybe ran away from home, ran away from their husbands. But yeah, they became nuns and meditated, and many attained arhat. They became arhats. They attained nirvana, or different levels of the path, high realizations. So it wasn't completely true for all women that they had no choice, no freedom. But generally, it's quite a different situation than for us today. But still, in the world today, a lot of women have similar situations, no choice, no control over their lives. They're dominated by others. So that's the idea behind this, that if you and the way he said it is, if this is the case, if you're a woman and you have all these problems and you don't want to be a woman anymore, I'll help you be born as a male. So you have a choice. If you want to continue being born as a woman, if you feel this is perfect. I think Jetsama Tenzin Palmo spoke about that. She wants to be born as a woman in her future life. And Tara, our wonderful mother Tara, she made that vow, that promise, that she would always be in female form, particularly to help women. So it's it's a choice that we have. And also in the story of Tara, in the first lifetime when she developed bodhicitta and started working for enlightenment, become a Buddha, some monks heard about her aspiration to become a Buddha, and they suggested that she dedicate her merits to be born as a male, have a male form, because they thought, oh, you can't become enlightened if you're a woman, you have to be a male. And then she made some reply about how, there's no woman, there's no male, this is like delusion. I don't remember the exact words, but this is not something inherently existing. There's no inherently existing male or female. These are just labels we give to, certain bodies because of their certain features. But the way I think of it is, it's our mind that becomes enlightened, not our body. So, and can we say that a mind is male or female? Right? Is a mind male or female? We can't say that, because mind is non-physical. Totally non-physical. And we've all had both types of bodies in our past lives. We've all been male and female. So there's nothing permanent, solid, inherently existing about male and female. So the important thing is, not paying attention to those kind of differences and not make a big deal out of them, and just work on our mind, because our mind has that potential to reach enlightenment and go beyond all these kind of dualistic ideas, situations. So I think it's makes more sense to put this in terms of anybody who may have a disadvantaged life, weak and subject to a lot of suffering and not having freedom and so forth. So anyone who's in that kind of situation and wants to have a better life with more power, more freedom, more choice, and so on, then Medicine Buddha will help you and eventually lead you to enlightenment, the ultimate goal. The ninth is for those holding wrong views to adapt correct views and follow the Bodhisattva path to supreme enlightenment. So, some views that people hold can be quite disastrous. They might lead them to commit acts of violence, even killing, and so on. So we have lots of examples of that right here in this country at present time, but also in the past. People have certain views about races, different races, and so on, and that can incite violence. Yeah, so some views really lead to a lot of suffering for others, but also for oneself, because if you hold on to those views and you act according to those views, you may be creating a lot of negative karma, bringing suffering on yourself in the future. And you're not going in the direction of enlightenment, liberation, you're just going in the direction of more suffering. So wanting to help people and beings be free of incorrect views and help them generate correct views, such as karma. What kind of, even without using the word karma, you don't have to use the word karma, but I think we find in all religions, all spiritual traditions, some similar ideas that if you do this kind of action, you're going to suffer. If you do this kind of action, it's right. Yeah, so good and bad, good and evil. You reap what you sow, as it says in the Bible. So having views like that, what I do makes a difference. What I do will bring about results that I myself will experience. So I better make sure I do the right things. And eventually, Medicine Buddha wants to bring everyone into the Bodhisattva's path, because that is the one that leads to supreme enlightenment, full enlightenment of Buddhahood. Number 10 is about those who are kind of captured, arrested, and tormented by kings to gain freedom upon hearing my name. And it doesn't seem to be necessarily freedom from prison. He doesn't mention that, because I was kind of wondering, does that mean he wanted to dissolve all the prisons and let everybody out? That could be quite disastrous, because some people are, a danger to others. But he talks about the different kinds of punishments that people experience, beating, torture, bound and whipped, and so on, capital punishment. So wanting to relieve beings of those kinds of sufferings. And then he says mainly, sounds like mental suffering, wants them to be free of mental suffering. So he says, if such persons hear my name due to the awesome spiritual force of my auspicious virtues, they will be freed from all sorrows and sufferings. So it's mainly helping beings in those situations to be free of their suffering and their sorrow and their mental suffering. But maybe if they are imprisoned unjustly, which is certainly the case sometimes, people are accused of a crime they didn't commit and sometimes sentenced to life imprisonment or even execution, capital punishment. even though they didn't do anything. So definitely people like that deserve to be freed. And then number 11 is thinking about those who out of hunger and thirst commit non-virtue. Yeah, so people who are desperately hungry and impoverished will sometimes steal or even kill, create non-virtue to relieve their suffering. Um, so for such beings, the Medicine Buddha wants to provide them with wonderful foods and drinks to fully satisfy their bodies, and then teaching them the Dharma, providing them with the taste of the teaching. They will ultimately become peaceful and joyous and will be established in it. So again, leading them out of suffering and to enlightenment. And the 12th is for those suffering from poverty and not having clothes, being tormented by the insects, heat, cold, and so on. If they hear my name and firmly retain it in their minds and hold to it, then may they have all sorts of wonderful clothing and everything they need, everything enjoyable. So a lot of these vows are kind of about mundane things, having food and clothes and being free of prison and so on. But and a few do mention wishing to bring these beings to enlightenment. But I think that is the aspiration in all cases. That's the ultimate goal, to help all beings reach enlightenment. But when people are in a situation where they're hungry, or they're in prison, or they're, destitute and so on, it's difficult to practice. It's difficult to even listen to teachings, much less practice them. So your mind is just so distracted by, other concerns. So it is important to make sure that people and beings have their needs fulfilled, so they're comfortable physically and mentally. Then their mind is in a state where they can be open to the teachings. Yeah, so by providing sentient beings with what they need for their physical and mental well-being, then he's helping them have the ideal situation in which they can practice and follow the path. So, have you started yet doing the visualization of the other medicine Buddhas? Yeah? Because these pictures are still. Huh? Oh, yeah. So, everyone is welcome to take one of these pictures that shows the visualization of all these medicine Buddhas above the head. There's actually one extra one at the very top. It's Shakyamuni Buddha. So there's 7 medicine Buddhas. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 medicine Buddhas plus Buddha Shakyamuni. So there are some practices that talk about the eight Buddhas. Okay, so that's the 7 medicine Buddhas plus Buddha Shakyamuni. That's not here in this one, but doesn't hurt. Doesn't hurt to have Shakyamuni Buddha out there. So each of these other Buddhas also made vows, and I thought just to talk about the first one, because otherwise it's too much information to absorb it all. But the first one, going up. Okay, so above your head is the blue medicine Buddha, lapis lazuli medicine Buddha. And then the next one above him, his name is the Buddha, King of Clear Knowing, Supreme Wisdom of a Notion of Dharma. And his color is reddish color. And his hands are they're in the same mudras as the medicine Buddha. The left hand is in the lap, the meditation position, but not holding a bowl, and the right hand is on the right knee, this gesture of giving, but not holding anything in it. So the mudras are similar to that of the medicine Buddha. And so each of these other Buddhas made vows as well, which are contained in another sutra. There's 2 sutras about the medicine Buddhas. So just in brief, the vows made by this particular Buddha, some of them are similar to the previous one. To help harmful beings obtain necessities, so beings who have acted in harmful ways. Just, I lost the place here in the book. Yeah, so sentient beings who've created negative karma by harming others, like through farming or through being in the army, being in battles, and so on. So if such beings hear my name and with utmost sincerity call it out and retain it in their minds, then may they have all necessities that they need, everything they need according to their wishes, and then cultivate what is wholesome, what is virtuous. May they, do virtuous things and eventually reach enlightenment. And then the second is about those who've committed, like, the 10 non-virtuous actions, killing and so forth, and if they're about to go to a bad rebirth, like hell, and if they hear my name, call it out, hold it in their minds, then may they obtain perfection in the 10 wholesome paths and not go to a bad rebirth and reach enlightenment. So saving those who are about to be born in a bad place from that situation and get them on the path of virtue and eventually enlightenment. And then the third one is about those who don't have freedom, who are like indentured servants, I think they call it, and who are being, sounds like slaves, being whipped and beaten, punished in horrible ways, and so on. So if they hear my name and call it out and hold it in their minds, may they be free from all perils and reach enlightenment. And then the fourth one is again about those beings who commit non-virtue, don't have faith in the 3 jewels, follow wrong views, create non-virtues, and so on. May they, this is a really long one, so wanting to help them go in a better direction and have fortunate rebirths where they can meet the teachings and follow the path and reach enlightenment. So those are just short forms of those vows. So again, another Buddha that is committed to helping sentient beings obtain everything they need temporarily and eventually reach enlightenment. Okay, so then I was thinking to start talking about afflictions and how to work with afflictions, because in a retreat situation like this, even though we wish our mind to be always in a good state and not have negative thoughts coming up, but they do sometimes. Sometimes they can happen during a session of meditation. We might have negative thoughts, feelings coming up about other people around us or the situation we're in, or memories from the past, people that we don't like. People may have harmed us, and so on. So sometimes just in a meditation session, afflictive thoughts can come up. And then outside of the session, when we're interacting, doing things, and so on, again, negative attitudes can come up. So it's important to acknowledge these and work with them skillfully. Use skillful means to work with our afflictions. So I thought to start with anger, because I think anger is the worst affliction, because it can be so harmful, so destructive, both for ourselves and others. So we'll start by just looking at what anger is as it's defined in Buddhism. So this is a definition from Buddhist teachings. So it's a mental factor. I'll read it first and then explain. It's a mental factor that being unable to bear a person, object, situation, or idea harbors ill will or wishes to harm. So that's like a general definition, meaning of anger. So it's a mental factor, and Buddhism talks about, well, our mind is actually very complex. It is made up of various factors or facets. It isn't just one thing, but there's different aspects of the mind. Some of these are called mental factors. So mental factors are just aspects of the mind that some of them are virtuous, some of them are afflictive, some of them are neutral, neither virtuous nor non-virtuous, but they could become so due to other factors. So we have all of these mental factors, and it's good to learn about them so that we can start to identify them, and especially the afflictive ones, because those are the ones that are the main cause of suffering, problems, difficulties, and the main thing that keeps us stuck in samsara, cyclic existence, doesn't enable us, and they prevent us from getting out of samsara, getting to liberation, getting to enlightenment. So we need, and they're not going to go away by themselves. Wishing them to go away, praying to the Buddha, please take away these afflictions. So that's not possible. We have to recognize them and work on them, overcome them with different methods. So anyway, it's a mental factor, and then there's always an object that we get angry at, and it could be a person. My guess is most of the time it's a person. It could be a human being, it could be an animal or an insect or a spirit, Mara. So it could be a person, but it could also be something inanimate, an inanimate object. If you have a device that's not working properly, get angry at it, throw it against the wall, something like that. A situation, we could also get angry about a situation, or it isn't just one person or one thing, but just this whole situation that's going on we don't like. An idea that's more abstract, just certain ideas, certain beliefs, certain views that people may hold, that we get really angry about. So those are some of the objects that we could have anger towards. And then it goes on to say, so it's anger is unable to bear it. I feel I can't stand this person. I can't stand this situation. And then harbors ill will or wishes to harm. Okay, so if it's really strong, then it might impel us to do something harmful, destructive, right? We feel like hitting somebody, breaking something, or just being destructive. Or it could just be holding on to ill will, holding on to a grudge, negative thoughts, negative attitudes that we may not act out, but they're there in our mind. Right. So I think, like I say, I think this is probably the worst affliction because it can lead to so much suffering. And like just looking at the world, um, we have horrible things going on, wars and violence, murders, domestic violence, terrorist attacks, and so on. People fighting with each other. Even if it's just verbal, it's still painful, right? Attacking others with words is still painful. So yeah, every day in the world there's so much suffering caused because of anger, hatred. And even if we manage to keep it inside and don't act it out, then it causes suffering in our mind. It's very disturbing, very painful. And yeah. So when we say, when, in Buddhism we say that anger is harmful and destructive, I'll talk about this more later, but one thing that we need to try to adapt is the view that we are not anger. Anger is just a factor in the mind. Yeah, it's a mental factor. It isn't me. It isn't who I am. Because we do sometimes have this tendency when anger is coming up in the mind to identify with it. And we even say things like, I am angry, right? I am angry, or she is angry, or he is angry. That's almost like the person and anger are one and the same. But that's not true. That's actually a misperception, a wrong view, wrong view. Yeah, anger is just a temporary situation. It's just a factor in the mind that is sometimes there and sometimes not. We can see that for ourselves. There's certain times when we're angry and it may be quite strong and it may last for a while, but we're not always like that. It goes away, it changes. So it isn't something permanent, something fixed in our mind. That's really, really important to understand. And incorporate that understanding so that when it does arise, you can see it as just a mental factor in the mind and not me, not who I am, not something permanent. So that itself is really helpful. Then it's like you're seeing it objectively. You're getting a bit of distance between yourself and your anger. And that enables you to work on it better. Whereas if you identify with it, you get totally caught up in it, then it's almost like suffocating, like you're controlled by your anger. And that then, you might do things and say things that you don't really want to do and say and regret afterwards and so on. But if you can see it as just a factor in the mind, just a mental factor, temporary, then it's easier to manage it. Won't be so strong. And that's helpful if if you do that with yourself, you can get that understanding with yourself, then you can also do that with other people. So then you notice somebody else is angry, it's just a temporary, like they got a cold. They got the sniffles. It'll pass. They weren't like that yesterday. They won't be like that tomorrow or next week. It's just something temporary. And that helps too, to not be so frightened. I used to be really scared of people when they got angry. I just want to run away. Um, not be so frightened or judgmental, critical of them. Oh, yeah, it's like an affliction, a temporary affliction, temporary sickness in the mind. Okay, so then I won't be able to finish all of this, but I'll at least start. So the next point is really helpful. It is based on inappropriate attention that exaggerates or projects unattractive qualities. So there's an evolution, there's a process for anger arising in our mind, even though it may seem like all of a sudden it's there. There's actually steps that happen for anger to arise. So the root cause of anger is ignorance. I won't go into that now, but just ignorance that doesn't see things correctly. So we're already sort of, confused about how we exist, how others exist. We're seeing things in a distorted way. And then when we perceive a person or an object or a situation and have an unpleasant feeling about it. There's sort of an unpleasant feeling. I don't have a good feeling about this, right? So that's there. Then the next step is the mind will start to make stories, project, fantasize. Yeah. Sometimes you can see that happening. I can see people nodding. And I don't think it's I don't think we do this deliberately. I think it's just an automatic thing. Their mind starts making up stories about this person, adding things on that may not be there, exaggerating what is there, and so on. And so it's like our mind sort of builds up an image of that person or object or situation so that it seems much worse than it really is. And so this is how it's explained in Buddhism. And the Dalai Lama talks about meeting a psychologist, American psychologist, Aaron Beck, who's apparently done a lot of research into anger and hatred. And this man told the Dalai Lama that when we see someone, when we're angry at someone, we see them as 100% bad. 90% of that is projected by our own mind. And the Dalai Lama says he was really delighted to hear that because he said, this is what Buddhism says too. There's so much projection there. Yeah. And so after that, right, after mind has done all this projecting and exaggerating, then, there's anger or hatred. So this can happen really fast and without even awareness of it, right? So we try to become more aware. We try to watch our mind, and then if we can see this process happening, we can stop it earlier. But sometimes you don't see it until you've already gotten angry and yelled at somebody and broken something. Yeah. And then I'll just do the next thing too. It also includes irritation, aversion, annoyance, impatience, spite, belligerence, resentment, hatred, and rage. So there's different degrees of anger. It isn't just, when you're shouting and screaming and breaking things, but even feelings of irritation or aversion, yeah, or being annoyed, impatient, and so on. So there's all different degrees of anger, from just mild dislike or aversion all the way up to hatred and rage and aggressiveness, where you're, actually wanting to do something violent. So this is helpful to recognize that, there are these different degrees. And the milder forms of anger, like irritation or aversion, may not be so destructive. But if we don't do something about them, it's like a little spark, right? Little spark that falls into a pile of hay. Yeah. So even those, it's good to notice them and deal with them, work with them. So I've run out of time. I won't be able to go further, but yeah, tomorrow when I come back, we'll look at some methods um, for dealing with anger. But I'm sure in the discussion group today, you'll have things to talk about with this.